there, and welcome to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. Balconies, patios, and other tight fits don't have to limit our garden pursuits. Today, designer Jenny Peterson illustrates how to capture our imagination and create impressive spaces regardless of their size. On tour, let's visit a couple that didn't limit their vision when they moved from Houston.
I'm going to pat the soil down firmly, and for those of you that think you don't have a green thumb, this is the color it needs to be. That's real gardening.
Master gardener Robert Beyer has been in love with plants forever. When he and his wife Lana moved from Houston to Austin in 2006, Bob welcomed this brand new domain of botanical exploration.
Just the fun of collecting and finding new and different things, and somehow finding a place to put them in the garden without making the garden look completely out of kilter. I call the backyard a mini botanical garden.
In front, Robert goes for a profile that works for the neighborhood, but adventures beyond the usual cast of characters. It's in back that he constantly experiments with its microclimates. Though mostly in sun for now, he takes advantage of what shade he gets. In each area, he wants to encounter a distinct botanical revelation. Since wildlife is important too, they garden organically and design niches for secretive residents.
That's how we design different areas, so that there's a certain flow as you walk around the garden, and it's just almost like a little surprise area.
For Lana, it can be a surprise every day, since Bob's garden can change overnight when a plant grabs his attention.
It's like the thrill of the hunt, always trying to find something a little different, that someone else might not have, that I can enjoy in the yard. It's not an ego thing, it's just the excitement of finding something that's new and different. Maybe a plant in a miniature form or an unusual growth form, a very unusual coloration to it. It may be a cultivar of a very commonly known species.
Lana puts it all into perspective.
Basically, when you have one of everything, it's hard to find combinations of plants that look well together, and that's where I depend on Lana a great deal. She has a real eye for design, and I'm just terrible at it. So I have the knowledge of the plants and how big they're going to grow and what to expect from them, and I share that with her, and she helps me put them in some sort of fashion where you can take a collection of one of each type of plant and make it look like it blends together, or it is homogenized.
He's being a little bit modest. He loves to show off his yard, and I love to meet people. So he attracts them, and then I get to talk with them.
Lana also spends part of her free time knitting for Threads of Love. But she has her own spot in the garden too. Bob likes her seasonal color just fine, though his passion now heads in another direction.
40% of the plants that I grow are variegated because I like different unusual cultivars and varieties of plants. I like to see a lot of color in the yard when things are not in bloom. Most plants go through a blooming cycle. Once the blooms are gone, there's not much to look at. I want to see something to look at, even in the dead of winter.
Bob's been quick to adapt from his Houston ways.
I'm not a glutton for punishment. I won't put in plants that I'm going to have a really, really difficult time trying to grow. I try to grow plants that are adaptive to this area. And if you'll notice, the lawn is looking terrible right now because of the drought that we've had. We just didn't feel that we could justify wasting water on maintaining a beautiful green lawn.
But it's good enough for active grandkids that don't have to worry about where they run. From their deck, Lana and Bob can keep an eye on them and the garden.
I like to be able to look out and enjoy the fruits of his labors.
Of course, Bob found the perfect microclimate on the deck for experiments in containers. One of them is his mini pond for lilies that bloom in season. Bob waters container plants from his rain barrel to reduce mineral residue in the pots. To overwinter tender plants, he installed his latest greenhouse against the house. Mainly, it's where he starts new ones to share with other gardeners or to propagate cuttings when he can't protect a tropical through frost.
For example, if a shrub, a tropical plant gets too large, I can propagate a cutting of it and keep the cutting for next year. And I like downsize my plants continually to keep them small enough to fit in the very limited garden space that I have.
When Bob's not in the garden, he's on the computer. Along with his website, where he details plant information, he blogs about his latest endeavors.
It's sharing your love for gardening and for horticulture with others in a way in which you're not expecting anything in return. You know, it's non-commercial. It's attempted. I'm trying to use the knowledge that I've gained from being a master gardener, from having a degree in horticulture, and from studying plants myself. I want to share that with others, and I think that's a great way to do so.
Bob's also volunteered his talents to Zilker Botanical Gardens newsletter. His camera has become as vital to his gardening gear as his pruners and shovel.
But when I stroll through the garden and I see what I've got here, believe it or not, I start thinking, what can I do next year?
He loves to dig. He won't wear gloves. He loves to get his hands in the dirt, and he loves to dig, and he loves to move things around. And so that's where I'll step in sometimes when he gets a little carried away with that. He killed a sage, which are hard to kill because he moved it too many times in one's growing season. But he does love to dig. He is happiest when I think he's a true gardener in that sense. He's happiest when he's got his hands in the dirt.
Just stick it in there. Get it down firm, and I'll give it some root stimulator in just a little while. I think of what's this garden going to look like next year. I'm always thinking ahead because I know it's going to change. The way the garden looks this year is very different from the way it looked last year and the year before that, and it'll look different again next year.
All right, thanks for sharing your garden with us. And now we're going to be talking about a topic that is red hot in Austin right now, which is small space gardens, in particular patios and balconies. And I'm joined by Jenny Peterson of J. Peterson Landscape Design. It's great to have you with us.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, nice to have you back on the program. And this is a topic that I'm sure that you're seeing a lot of demand for.
We really are. There's a lot of people that are moving downtown, kind of downsizing from their suburban homes down to urban condos and lofts. And so we're seeing a lot of patio gardening, a lot of rooftops, a lot of balconies, and some are quite small, so it's a little bit of a challenge.
Well, I'm going to learn from this conversation because I have a tiny little balcony right now that it's not really integrated into my life yet. And that's really the purpose of a good design, is to get those spaces used, right?
Yes, absolutely. You go from like I'm in an apartment as well, and my balcony opens up off of my dining room, so I like it to be an extension of my dining room and my entertainment area.
Right, and for people living in small spaces, every square foot counts.
Every square foot, every square inch of real estate counts.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, and the balconies can be great places to entertain or to spread out the entertaining in a small space. So what are some of the basic rules that you talk to your clients about when it comes to designing a small balcony space?
I really try to remind them that designing an outdoor space is very, very similar to designing an indoor space. You're using the same elements, flooring, furniture, decorative items, and lighting, only maybe in different materials to withstand the elements outside.
Okay, well that makes perfect sense to me. The one thing I think that may surprise people that they have a lot of options on is the flooring piece.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I actually had a client last week who we did a little one-day makeover for her patio, and I said the first thing we need to get is a rug. And she kind of balked at that. She said, "That I don't want to spend money on that. That's not really necessary. My patio floor isn't that bad." But once we got the rug in there, it really made it seem like an outdoor living room.
Right. Well, you brought an example of this isn't a rug, but it certainly has the impact of one.
These are just incredible. They're made of like a plastic material. It's polypropylene, and some of them are actually reversible. So, and they come in, large sizes, or this is a runner. You can get like a little doormat size, but they can look like an oriental carpet. They can look like, kind of a funky, more of an Asian kind of feel. Or, yeah, they're really cool.
Well, just seeing this is giving me an idea already that
good.
I've got to get one of these for my patio space, and I have seen the color variations. You can get some really bright, wonderful things there. And for those people who, like in my case, I have a kind of a dark patio, so something bright and cheerful out there would, I think, really change the space and make it a lot more appealing. So for people who aren't interested in this, though, they can actually stain a lot of those concrete. If it's a place that you own, you can stain the concrete.
Yes, you can stain the concrete. It's actually a pretty easy process. Obviously, if you're renting, that's not an option for you, and that's when I bring in the outdoor rugs. But if it's your own place, that's a simple thing to do. It's not really all that expensive. You can just, homeowners can do it themselves. You just kind of have to read up on it a little bit because the materials are a little caustic. But it's fairly easy.
Okay, so flooring is starting off place. It provides that patterning underneath, or that sense of serenity, something very simple. Building up from that, furniture is the next step. And I tend to think of patio spaces as always being entertaining. So I always think of just chairs and side tables for people who want to sit and have a cocktail or something like that.
You can use lots of different types of furniture, like a chaise lounge, where one person can lean back and spread out and enjoy themselves, or if you need it for extra seating, 2 or 3 people can actually sit on it. Bistro tables are great, little 2-seaters. They're light enough and mobile enough so that it provides flexible seating to move around in a small area. Also benches, that can be off to the side. You can bring that up to a table. So you can get a lot of seating in a small area when you plan it correctly.
Planning is the key, and also thinking about the style. You want the indoors and outdoors to mesh, right?
Yes, it doesn't have to be identical, but it really should flow. If you have kind of a more contemporary kind of look on the inside of your space, moving to the outside, if you make it kind of kitschy and funky, if you want that's great, because it's your space and you're the only one that really needs to be happy in it. But I really try to make it more seamless going from inside to outside.
I agree with your sensibilities there. I think it really, especially because often they're behind large plate glass windows, you kind of want that sense of continuity going on there. So flexibility and matching styles is the word on the furniture. The next piece, this is something I think is really fun to think about, is the lighting. Most of us are stuck with those one kind of old-fashioned overhead fixtures that really kind of glare at you and are not kind for entertaining.
Exactly. There's all sorts of different lightings, for example, that you use inside. You've got your task lighting, your ambient lighting, and then, like candles and things like that. You can use the exact same thing outside. Again, sometimes in slightly different materials. You can bring lamps outside if they're a little protected, if it's not going to be raining. Some of us can't change our existing light that's attached, but the things that you can add are the overhead stringed patio lights. The rope lighting works really well. You can wrap the little white Christmas lights into your plants. You can use...
you brought this, and I love this.
Yeah, these are really beautiful. I picked this up over at Barton Springs Nursery, and it's just like a little crackled glass votive holder. I mean, what's more inexpensive or easy than that? And you just like pop it right into the plant here. This will be a little bit out of an angle here, but then just like that, it's really easy, and you can pop that in any of your planters, or even use solar lights. Those little solar lights that that you use to line a pathway with, you can pop those into your planters as well.
I like the idea of using Christmas lights out there
myself. I just think it looks really kind of twinkly and magical when you add those types of lights.
Yeah, I really like that a whole lot. Now, one of the things that is a absolute essential is using the vertical spaces, and often you have a lot of wall space out there, and often surrounded on 2 or 3 sides by the apartment. So you have an opportunity to do some things for hanging decorative elements as well as plants.
Right. We're all familiar with the hanging baskets. That's a given when you're in a small space. These rail plantings rail containers are really nifty to use. one thing that some clients have told me is that they'll get these, and then they either don't put them up or they return them because they don't know how to attach them to their railing.
Right.
So if you have a deck railing, that's simple because there are brackets available.
Right.
But if you have an inch wide metal
Yeah.
railing like I have, what I found works really well are these zip ties. Now, I brought them in black,
Sure.
but you can get them in whatever color to match your
Right.
your railing.
Or clear.
Yeah, or clear. So we're going to pretend this is a railing. So you just put this on and zip it, you know, just as tight as you can get it on there, and they're very, very sturdy.
Sure.
And so get that really tight and then cut off the edge there.
Sure.
And flip
Very
it down there.
simple to do.
It really is.
And then you can put all sorts of decorative things in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something I try to keep in mind too is if you're going to be planting this, which is more typical to plant it on the outside of the
Sure.
railing, this is the side that you're looking at when you're seated on your balcony. So try
Right.
to plant some cascading plants on the back side.
To hide
Yes.
the whatever.
Yeah. So then you can also enjoy those plants on your own side of the balcony
Right,
instead of on
right.
the other side.
Right. So other elements in terms of verticality, we mentioned hanging baskets, but
Right.
there you can put little holders on the wall as well to hold potted plants, or you
Right.
can put up artwork or lighting fixtures.
Exactly.
Whatever you want to do, really.
Yeah, you can even get a trellis
Mm-hmm.
and put it just sink it right into a rectangular planter, and you can grow vines, flowering vines on that trellis. And if you have enough sun, you can actually do some vegetables.
Yeah.
Which I personally don't have enough sun to do that, but
Yeah.
that's a really cool thing if you can do that on your balcony.
One element of the design that I always think about in an outdoor space is sonic element. A wind chime or some other kind of hanging element is always a nice way to kind of add a different element out there as well.
That's perfect. My balcony overlooks I-35, and so I have a lot of, and there's a high school next door, so I've got a lot of not very ambient, nice noises around me. So those things are really nice, and a water feature also kind of can
perfect.
cover up that kind of sound.
And just even if it's just a bowl of water,
Right.
Or if you don't want to mess with that, a bowl of blue marbles. We were talking about that earlier.
Yes.
I have some marbles sitting here next to me, and something that adds a touch of even faux water, if you will.
Exactly.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, Jenny. People can be in touch with you how?
Through my website, www.jpetersongardendesign.com.
Okay.
And so it's got all my contact information on there.
Perfect. Well, again, in the new urbane Austin, growing more urbane every single day, I'm sure that a lot of folks will enjoy that conversation, and hopefully you'll hear from a lot of them.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. It's been a pleasure having you back on the program.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here. And coming up next is our friend Daphne Richards.
Welcome to Down to Earth. Our question this week is another great one from one of our viewers, and he wants to identify the weed in the photo that he sent us. It's a great photo of a really bad plant. The plant is Smilax bona-nox, and it's a very noxious plant, very common in areas near greenbelts. So if your property or your home backs up to a greenbelt area where plants are left naturally, there are natural trees and vegetation growing, then you may have this in the back of your garden or wherever your garden abuts this greenbelt area. I have a really big problem with this in my yard because I do have a greenbelt area behind my backyard, and it is very difficult to treat, unfortunately. There are a few chemical treatments that you can use, but they don't work well. To use those, you need to use a combo of glyphosate and triclopyr. You want to cut the plant to the ground and then paint the cut surface immediately. You will have to do this numerous times to get rid of the plant. But the best way is just to use some good old-fashioned muscle. You want to wet the soil and use a very sturdy trowel or a shovel and dig very deep to get the entirety of this plant out of the ground. It does have a lot of stored carbohydrates in its root system, so you really do need to get all of that plant out, and you'll have to fight it for a while because it will come back in from that greenbelt area. Our plant this week is Blackfoot Daisy, Melampodium leucanthum. It's a wonderful Central Texas native. It's another short, slowly creeping perennial that looks great planted in little pockets in your garden, or in the front of your garden beds, or even in containers. It loves full sun, but it's also great in some light shade. It gets about 6 to 12 inches tall and about the same wide. It's covered with precious little white flowers with yellow centers. It does bloom from early spring all the way through mid to late summer. It does self-sow easily, but it's not invasive. It's challenging to deadhead, so getting rid of those seed heads and keeping it from self-sowing is very challenging. It's extremely water efficient, so it needs well-drained soil to grow healthy. It's tolerant of strongly alkaline soils, which we have commonly here. And it's also, again, great for rocky areas and used with other extremely low water use plants. It's also hardy to well below zero and said to be deer resistant, which makes it a great plant for our area, also when we have very harsh winters as we did this last year. To do in your garden this month, it's time to start pumpkin seeds. If you want those pumpkins to be ripe and great for you this fall for your Halloween, you want to go ahead and put those seeds in the garden now. Those are very large seeds, so they're very easy to plant in the garden and have them grow from seeds rather than starting them indoors. We'd love to hear from you, so visit klru.org/CTG to send us your question or plant of the week from your garden.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in with John Dromgoole for Backyard Basics.
Hello, gardening friends. Welcome to Backyard Basics. More and more people are growing vegetables these days. For the past couple of years, I've seen so many new gardeners coming on and starting to grow vegetables in their landscape, and it's just a wonderful thing. For example, right here, $2.50 for this tomato, $2 for this pepper, and $2.80 for 3 squash. That's 7 something for just these few vegetables. Now these are organic, and so organic costs a little bit more, but still, it's very expensive. And you can grow a lot of vegetables at home, just many more than this. You can probably grow $200 or $300 worth of vegetables easily, even in only these varieties right here, and there's so many to pick from. A lot of folks are doing it in their front yard. Here's a local gardener, Renee Studebaker's yard, and it's beautiful. She took out the lawn. Finally, folks are taking out the lawn. If you're going to be using a mower out there and polluting, and if you're going to be out there wasting water, well then, why don't you convert all of that into growing food? The neighbors like it, and it's just a beautiful way to change your landscape. So a lot of folks have switched from the backyard, the traditional way, to the front yard, where there's light. Now, in some instances, the light is minimal in the landscape. There's not a lot of room, and or you're doing it for the kids, although I would encourage you to grow food for the whole family. So some folks are using what's known as the square-foot garden, a very productive garden. This is mine, and this is just a beautiful, highly productive garden. You can put many into the garden out there, many different types of square-foot gardens, some long ones, and but the square foot is very important in order to get an abundance of vegetables. So square foot gardening is really popular. Now, one of the things to remember is you can't garden in the shade. There are no farms in the shade. Here's an example of a tomato that's been growing in the shade. It's nothing on it. There's no vegetables there, no tomatoes on it, because it's in the shade. So do not plant your tomatoes in any kind of shade. They won't produce. Go out into the sun. 15 feet away from this shady tomato is one producing like crazy. And this is one of the heirloom varieties. And next year, heirlooms are going to be very big. Heirloom seeds are going to be available all over the place. Heirloom transplants of tomatoes and other vegetables will be all over the place. Those are some of the best ones that you can get. And it's going to be popular. So get in there early to get your vegetables. Now, if you have a limited space, maybe you'll want to get some transplants. Transplants are also available. And they will go into the garden, and in those limited gardens, like one small square-foot garden, this will be perfect also. You don't need to buy a whole bunch of seed. But seeds are the most economical way to start a garden. And you can grow them over and over from season to season. Seeds usually last a long time. One of the more important things you're going to need in that garden is homemade compost. There is nothing better than homemade compost. And so I would encourage you to do that and read a little bit. There's lots of information out there. Some of it's online, and some of it's just available in bookstores or at the library. You can go down there. You don't have to buy anything at the bookstore. And just go down to the library and study. One of the important things, depending on where you live, is a chart that tells you when to plant. If you're a new gardener, you don't really know, maybe don't have the experience yet on what season we're planting. So that's another important aspect of this, is to know when to plant, where to plant, and to notice that next year heirloom vegetables are going to be very, very popular. So if you don't want to pay a tremendous amount of money for a little bit of food, why not garden at home? It's economical, and the food comes out of the garden as fresh as can be. The freshest fruit and food you're going to grow is in the home garden. Then you go to the farmer's market and you supplement the rest of it. So it's easy to do. I encourage you to get on board with us and grow your own food at home. And don't forget, companion planting is another very important of doing these things. For Backyard Basics, I'm John Dromgoole. I'll see you out in the garden.
Visit klru.org/CTG to watch online and get more tips. Next week, find out how to grow abutilons. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online and follow CTG's blog. Check out klru.org/CTG.